last week when I said I was going to do Tagashi. It was actually Pulgasari was the name of the movie. So there's that. Just want to acknowledge my fuck up. That was such a weird thing. I just had no reason to think the name was right. Anyway, welcome.
What in the fuck is Tagashi then?
Nothing. There's some guys named Tagashi. It's a real word.
Oh.
It's a real word. It's just not like a thing. Like nothing huge. I think there's like a couple like actors or something that are named something Takashi. But I just like got the name wrong for some reason. I have no idea. It was such a weird mental hiccup. Anyway, welcome listeners. Welcome to Kyle and Cody's Cult Cinema Cast. I'm Kyle.
And I am Cody.
This week we're reviewing Pulgasari by famous director. Have things in front of me. I don't know what the names are, clearly. Shin Sang-uk. Famously known as the Prince of Korean cinema. You'll notice I didn't say South Korean. He's probably thoroughly the prince of both. I think history will see him as that. He is a prominent director. He and his wife started a production company called Shin Films, or at least him and his wife had a production company which led them to they produced a lot of very famous movies in South Korea. They've won a lot of awards in the region. He's also the guy that was responsible for filming the first on-screen kiss in South Korean cinema in the movie Lily of Death or something. I can't remember. There's a Korean word for it too. I just don't have it on hand. But yeah, he has a very interesting story, actually. So, yeah, he was a big film director in the 1950s and 60s. His production company made like 300 films. He had some like controversy going on there just because like it was the 50s. They weren't they weren't even in South Korea. They didn't have as much a little bit more freedom. His production company was eventually shut down by the government after like more government scrutiny. He kind of became disillusioned, but he was still making some films. And to continue his story, he ended up divorcing his wife. He was married to Chae Eun-hee, who's actually also a famous actor in her own right. She also won several awards. And they ended up divorcing in the 60s after like a scandal. He had an affair and married, and he had an affair essentially, allegedly at least. I'm not sure if it was totally true, but they ended up getting divorced. 2 years later, she goes missing in Hong Kong after going for a essentially she was promised that she was going to be able to direct a film, and she goes missing in Hong Kong. Shin Sung-uk goes to look for her, and he is kidnapped by by agents of the North Korean government. North Korea, for those of you who are historic illiterate about this, Korea was Korea is just a Asian country south of China, south of China. It's got it's on a peninsula. In World War II, it was invaded by the Japanese, and after it was liberated after the defeat of the Japanese in World War II, it was divided into halves, with one half in Soviet control and one half in American control. Those eventually became their own countries. That eventually goes into the Korean War, and that's how we get South and North Korea today. South Korea is a democratic capitalist country. North Korea is an authoritarian communist country under the rules of the Kim Jong's family. There's been 3 of them. I forget what the first one's name is. Then there was Kim Jong-il, and then now there's Kim Jong-un is the leader, supreme leader of North Korea. And the North Korean agents of the North Korean government kidnapped Shin Sang-uk and Chien Ho to essentially to make movies for the North Korean government because Kim Jong-il, who's not supreme leader at the time, he's still working under Kim Il-sung is the previous guy. Right?
Mm,
Yeah, right.
maybe.
Yes. Kim Il Sung is still supreme leader of North Korea at this time, but Kim Jong Il is like essentially he's got like a role is like a role in the propaganda department of North Korea. There's a proper word for that, but I don't have it off the top of my head. And he's actually a big movie fan occasionally, apparently, because he's such a big wig in the North Korean government. He was able to sneak in a bunch of movies from outside, and he had some like 15,000 movies. And he figured that North Korea could benefit from using cinema to help propagandize the masses and make them more palatable and work with that. Um, and like, despite what people like think, there is a tradition of cinema in communist countries. Um, China has a bit of a film industry. The Soviet Union had some pretty famous films. Actually, there were a couple of them. We've talked about them occasionally. We haven't watched any, but Kim Jong-il kind of wanted to start this in North Korea, so he kidnapped Chi-un and used her as bait to lure in uh, Shin Sang-uk, and then brought them into the country. Essentially, kept them in prison for half a decade, getting building them up so they'd be able to do work for him. They eventually get Shin and his ex-wife get remarried at Kim Jong Il's nudging, and they make several films for North Korea, including something in 1980 called it's translated to the Runaway or the Runaway, and it's considered as one of his Shin considers it one of some of his best work, or considered it some of his best work. He's passed away now. Yeah, and eventually that leads him to make they had essentially Kim Jong Il had gotten a look at Godzilla 1985, really like, or Godzilla, some Godzilla films, really liked them, and essentially had Shin Sang-uk get some guys from who worked on Godzilla. The guy who plays Pulgasari in this, Kenpachiro Satsuma, he's actually a guy who played Godzilla and also played Gigan and Hidora. And yeah, you if you're a big kaiju film fan, you might have recognized that name. And him and a few others were recruited to do this film. They may have been sort of kidnapped. The reason I say sort of is because they were hired for a job. They probably would have known that Shin was working with North Koreans and they were doing this for the North Korean film industry. But the main story is that they were being told they were going to do filming in China, which isn't that weird because China and North Korea are at least on paper allies. That's a complicated political situation we won't get into, and is for smarter men than I to explain to you. So, but essentially, they end up in North Korea instead. They all got to leave, unlike Shin, and then they end up making this movie in 1985 and releasing it in July. And yeah, that's the history of this. Shin and his Shin and Chi end up escaping well, when they're going to when they're trying to promote a film after this that they were planning on making about Genghis Khan, and they essentially escaped during an interview and barged into and like made their way to the American embassy, and that eventually leads them to North America, where they live for several like a over a decade, about a decade probably. Shin actually is a producer and director in relation to the Three Ninjas series. For people who have heard of that,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a ninjas kids show from or a kids movie. They're a series of kids movies from the '90s, and he was actually reluctant to go to North Korea at first because back he was going to go to South Korea again to return, but he was reluctant to do that at first because he had had some problems himself with the government before he had been kidnapped, and he wasn't going to be certain if the South Koreans would accept his explanation of kidnapping because I mean he had done like a full like debriefing with the CIA at this point. So it's stuff that happened, but still he didn't. For a guy that would have had some trouble with the government, it would have been more difficult for him to trust them. But he did eventually. Him and his wife did eventually return, and they passed away in the early to mid 2000s in South Korea. So that's a bit of their history.
So, just an interesting side note. This is actually apparently a remake to the 1962 South Korean film under the same name, or under the name uh, Borgasali. Borgasati. I don't know.
I think that's an alternate spelling of it.
But like I was looking under because there's the film itself is considered lost, which means that there's no living copy of it out there right now.
As far as we know.
Which is kind of interesting because I was looking under other lost films in the 1960s, and there was one called Batman Fights Dracula, and it's a Filipino parody made without the permission of DC Comics, which got it copyright, so it doesn't exist. But I'd like to see it now.
I mean, we can find you some weird Batman parodies. Those exist. I can find you some. Or knockoff Batmans. I think there's like a Turkish Batman.
I don't know if it's like, I think the novelty of a Filipino Batman is what's really driving me to look for this film.
There's
So,
definitely a Turkish
want it.
Batman which you can watch. So there's that. So yeah, this movie is a North Korean film, if I didn't make that clear, made with like the full support of the North Korean government. And Shin Sung-wook had like kind of cool like I mean obviously it's a terrible scenario. He was in prison for like 5 years. But he had like I think he made like there's a point in one of his earlier movies before this where like he made a joke about wanting to them just blowing up a real train for the end of this movie, and Kim Jong-il gets him a real train and they dynamite it. So there's that. Oh yeah, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. He appears to have some sort of basketball man on his shirt.
I don't have any answers to the question.
There is also a Batman versus Dracula animated movie, which is pretty fun. He's showing me the picture of the Batman fights Dracula.
Yeah, but that's like new stuff though. Like this is like 1960s. Like I think like the original Batman movie, if you've never seen it, it's quite a treat with Adam West's Batman. Honestly, if you can pick up a copy. I know this because at one point in time I moved into an apartment. I was living in Moose Jaw. I didn't have anything. I was like 18 at the time. I had a bed, and a friend of mine, he's like, "Hey, do you want a television?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so he brings me over this like 27-inch box television DVD combo, and I'm like, like no movies, and he's like, okay, well, just come over and you can borrow some of my movies. And one of the movies he had was this DVD copy of the original Batman movie from the 1960s with Adam West. And it's just so stupid that it's funny.
It's so weird that that's the first Batman movie. I think there's some serials before that, from like the 40s, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's so weird that like, because like everyone forgets about it because like, oh yeah, the first one was like the Tim Burton '89 one. I'm like, oh yeah, no, technically, yeah.
It's really funny to see how far Batman has came from Adam West to like
That was a weird era of history. That when like comics were like that, and I don't even know if it was really like that in '66 when those comics were being produced. I don't know. What's a Batman issues 1966? What do those look like?
Oh, probably just as bad.
Maybe though. I knew I'd have this problem because there's an issue. Oh, okay. Okay. Batman comic book issues. I think like I mean it's not the same. It's a little bit darker. I'm looking at one. They're a little bit. It's a little bit grittier, but not by much. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's weird era. Anyway, Pulgasari. It's a kaiju movie.
Just a real weird side note on this. I've been looking at some of the reviews on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people like drank the Kool-Aid when writing these reviews.
How do you mean?
5 stars, one of the finest movies ever made. Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong II hopefully died happy knowing he had made one of the best films to ever hit the hunger-stricken North Korean cinemas. Absolutely incredible. 5 stars. Truly a testament to the triumph of the Korean people. The direction by the dear leader completed the film. This movie is
so here's the
definitely a
thing about
classic.
that.
5 stars.
Oh, the memes.
10 out of 10. Probably the best movie ever.
But here's the thing about that. He might have liked it when it came out, but like when Shin ditched ditched his security detail and fled to the Americans, they like banned all his cinema in North Korea. It's all banned to this day, I'm sure. Like still probably just get this for free because I don't know where the money for this is going. I wouldn't.
The only person I've ever seen bring it up was like, they kidnap people for this movie. I can't even ironically like this. 0 out of 10. But he still gave it 1 star.
I had a debate with some of our friends, or I mentioned this to our friends about like what I should deduct from this movie's score for the kidnappings, because that's pretty dubious. Like that's like probably at least as bad as like killing an animal to make a movie. Like it's rough. Can you even give a movie that took this much torment to make? I think like we'll get into reasons why I think it's still like okay. Also, the North Koreans canceled it, so that's a thing. But I don't know. I'm just gonna like knock a mark off it, I think. And Shin Sung-uk, I think there's a reason to believe he did put like some passion into these movies. Obviously, like make no mistake, like he might have been making the best of his situation, but he did not. Like he would have left on a second. I don't know, like if like halfway through making this, he had gotten an opportunity to like fuck off to an American embassy or something, he might very well have done it. Like I'm not like this is not like you being kind to the guy who's your slaver essentially, because I would consider this slavery in a sort, because you can't leave. He couldn't have left of his own free will. There's more than enough reason to believe that. He might have been granted some more trust at moments, but like if there's like even something like you're not afraid, you're afraid you won't be able to make it, and or like you could leave, but like you'd leave your wife behind, you might not take that chance. Like slavery is a complicated issue. You can't throw a ton of moral judgment on them not for like totally resisting, because if he didn't do what he was told, he would have been tormented for a long time. So I'm not going to lay any moral judgment at Shin's feet. So I'm going to like appreciate his art for what it is. And I think there is probably some subversive aspects to this that other critics have pointed out. And I think that maybe does do it, like make it acceptable. Like, don't like honestly encourage like Kim Jong-il could not have made a movie that was good, most likely. Like, these authoritarians will like support artists right up until the point they're even slightly critical of them. So that's an important thing to remember. Like, that's like, you can sometimes sneak stuff past them, which I believe he could have easily done here. But yeah, I think this is acceptable to watch and enjoy. Don't give Kim Jong-il credit for this, though. He's like, it's not okay what he did. You could like, no matter how good this movie is, it could easily be sacrificed to give back those two people those years of their lives back, years of their freedom back. That you'd trade this movie for that in a heartbeat. So that's where we're starting with this, as far as ethics go about it. But yeah, so Pulgasari is a North Korean kaiju movie that's a Godzilla ripoff. It's yeah, like I said, it used a bunch of Godzilla people to do the acting and some of the effects. One of the bigger criticisms is it doesn't really compare in terms of effects to like the kaiju movies of the 80s. Like, it looks like it's made 10 years before it is, which I'm not going to hold against the movie, cuz like, it's made in an authoritarian state. They were doing as much as they could, probably. And we wouldn't, if this movie was made in the 70s, we wouldn't be holding that against it. So there's that. Another big difference between this and other kaiju films is this is a period piece, set in monarchical period Korea from way back in the day. I forget exactly when they figure it is, but so yeah, it's a period piece, which is a little different. Most kaiju stuff is either like ancient or like modern day, so that's kind of neat. They do make a lot of use of outfits in this. I think there's like 5 or 6 versions of the monster made through this, the costumes that are used, like different costumes. So that's kind of impressive. And they could have gone with something a fair bit cheaper than this, I think, if they wanted to, but they pulled out the stops. I'm not going to take that away from them. Even like, obviously not worth it, but still. So yeah, the film opens with our main character Ami working a well to get some water for the blacksmiths that her father is a local blacksmith. He has a bunch of guys working for him along with her brother. She's bringing water to them. They're doing their blacksmithing. One of the men, Inde, or goes to uncover, is told to clean some stuff up, but hesitates, and it's revealed that he is hiding swords. He tells Ami's father, Toksue, that he is hiding them for some friends who are revolutionaries in the valley, living in the hills, essentially. They're called bandits throughout the film, but I think that's kind of in the sense that you would call like any revolutionary group terrorists. It's only as damning as you want it to be, and it's like a term they're throwing, the government's throwing at them to make them less credible as a force. And yeah, they do definitely seem like a revolutionary force, and eventually an army. Inde has apparently been chosen as the leader of this bandit crew, something Toksue is known about, but he is going to have, because of this, he can't stay, and he's going to go leave to live with the revolutionaries on a more permanent basis. This also prevents Inde from one day marrying Ami and taking over the blacksmith's forge, which is something that Tokusue had mentioned. And he's kind of broken up like this. Tokusue's sympathetic to their plight, so it's not so much that he's siding with the government at all. As the as the crew is leaving, the governor of the area arrives and commissions Tokusue to make a bunch of weapons. Tokusue points out that he can't do so because they're short on iron and metal. So the governor unveils a cart full of farm tools and cooking pots, which he is going to have Tokusue reforge into weapons. That's a thing you can do, as long as they're made of the proper metal. Also, in Asia, there's a proud tradition of using farm implements as weapons, so yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Might not be the worst idea to seize those two from their point of view. That night, Tokusue gives back those weapons. There's also a big riot in the town before as they're seizing these weapons. Inde and some of the blacksmith crew fights back. They end up getting taken. Tokusue is punished for trying to give back the pots and the farming equipment. It's at this point when the governor is punishing him for this that he first brings up the Pulgasari myth, which I don't know what that is really. It's just something that's brought up. He is imprisoned along with Inde and the revolutionaries. Tokusue is being starved in order to try to make him to do work. He is refusing, and in solidarity, the rest of the other prisoners go on a hunger strike until they feed him. That's naturally kind of ineffectual because it's like, oh, what? The guys I've imprisoned for being revolutionaries are going to get themselves killed? Okay. Tokusue's daughter, Ami, and her brother go to try to sneak a visit with Tokusue to go interview him because he's been starving. They try to sneak him food. They eventually get chased off and they have to throw a bunch of food and rice through Tokusue's prison window, which they find. Instead of eating it, Tokusue molds it into a figurine, like a little toy monster, and then he starts praying and putting his soul into it. Like he's just wishing that he's trying to like bring to life this Pulgasari character, and he ends up dying. As they pull him out of the prison to go get rid of the body, Ami gets a hold of the toy. She takes it home with them, her and her brother, and she eventually pricks her finger on a sewing needle, dropping blood on the toy and bringing it to life. This tiny Pulgasari, which is the size of a small dinky toy, starts eating her sewing needles. And it's revealed that Pulgasari eats iron. So he does that, eats a bunch of the sewing needles, eats her, and then as they go to sleep for the night, she grows bigger. Pulgasari grows bigger, going to about a foot in size. It escapes the house and starts eating forge scraps, bringing it to probably toddler size eventually. Someone swings by to tell Ami and her brother that they're gonna kill Inde. This execution is interrupted by Pulgasari attacking, biting a bit out of the sword they're going to use to execute him, and chewing off Inde's manacles. A soldier tries swinging a sword at Pulgasari, it just bounces off. I assume because he's kind of like made of iron now, and this triggers a revolt because they've freed some people. The government the governor initially doesn't believe this monster is chased off as soldiers, so they send a guy to go check on this. And the government sees that Pulgasari is now the size of a child and is eating some of the stuff from the armory before breaking through a wall. Pulgasari has started making noise at this point. He's kind of has bear noises. To describe Pulgasari, he's a bit of a sort of not Godzilla-ish, more like a troll, kind of like a Japanese style Oni troll sort of thing. He's got he'll eventually grow horns. He stands straight upright instead of being on a slope like Godzilla is. He has a tail though, where he grows a tail, and he's kind of like gooey and lumpy at this point. But as he starts getting to like regular human size, he'll develop like a muscly chest and like shoulder spikes and whatnot, and start looking more intimidating. But right now he kind of looks like a child. So Pulgasari gets away, and the revolutionaries actually managed to break their way in to the governor's estate and take over the place, as Ami and her brother end up going after Pulgasari, who steals some farm equipment to eat it. Inde eventually attacks the governor's main castle after the governor takes his mother and his brother and starts torturing them for information on where Inde is. He eventually charges and gets his revenge, killing the governor without Pulgasari's help for the most part. He would have died without Pulgasari, but they don't require Pulgasari to take over the government, which I think is a major theme of this movie, is that Pulgasari is just something that enables the peasants to revolt and like evens the playing field against the government's stronger weaponry and stuff. And that's a lot of the themes of this movie. It's kind of like a sort of communist embracing of the working class, overthrowing the monarchy into something that's seemingly a lot more egalitarian. And this is part of the propaganda piece of the movie, which I actually like. This on its own, I think the movie on its own isn't so bad. There's some context about this being used to prop up North Korea, which wouldn't be bad. But I think if you separate it from that context as much as you can, it works. I think it ends up working okay.
I don't really have a good understanding of the social hierarchy currently in the system of North Korea. In this movie, there's governors and there's also kings, which kind of confused me. So it's something feudal to some extent, but
it's still feudal. How it would work is like instead of having like a king and like dukes and stuff, you just have a king and governors. So the governor is basically a duke that's just like picked from like administration of the kingdom.
So they still own land.
Yeah. As much as a feudal society owns their land.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a very anti-monarch movie, which I kind of like. Like I said, you can kind of respect the politics of this on a surface level. You're just like, okay, but North Korea is kind of like all these like Marxist, Leninist, Stalinist, but like societies of kind of like
the king dies in the end.
Yeah, this is anti-monarchical. The reason the propaganda might fly a little flat is because you've ended up with a new authoritarian regime in its place. But I think that's the thing we got to remember. Like, you're replacing one authoritarian regime with another. The old authoritarian regime wasn't good. It's just this is the current boogeyman. It's not as if there wasn't a boogeyman before. Like, I don't think anyone would suggest that Korea should still be run by a king. I think that's not a
that's definitely not what I'm saying. Though what I'm saying is it might not work as a propaganda piece because by the end of the movie, the king's overthrown. How is that propaganda towards North Korea?
It's anti like Korea's like a North Korean official would not identify with the king. because okay, you and me know that like Kim Jong-un is like an authoritarian, absolute despot, or like absolute authoritarian person, something akin to a monarch, but he's not. He's like coding his belief system in the idea that he is leading a grassroots level revolution that's against the old monarch version of things. It doesn't matter that it's not true, it's how they're identifying. Like lots of things we say about people in the past aren't but yeah, no, it's again, it's propaganda. It might not be effectively be true. It's like kind of like how you criticize like you could criticize Hamilton by saying, "Hey, these guys are a lot less problematic in this piece than they would have been in real life." That's how it is. But yeah, the North Korean government would view itself as like a proper communist idea, which is obviously they're not fulfilling that promise, but they view themselves as fulfilling the promises of Marx of putting the working man in charge of the economy. It's not true based on how they do it, but it's what they're trying to establish themselves as. Like they view themselves like everyone like the propaganda line in the North Korean government is that they would be the peasants in this movie, leading a righteous revolt against authoritarian like a capital monarchs and the descendants of those monarchs, which would be the capitalists in their eyes. So yeah, there's obviously contradictions in that, but yeah, they view themselves as the working man stiffs. And like people do this all the time. They always claim they find some guy like these big shots with a lot of wealth and money always try to weasel their way into pretending to be working class heroes. It's a pretty common thing in every society.
So I actually have a story about this because the other day I was watching they show these weird motivational clips on Facebook every so often of like these interviews, and it was Bill Gates interviewing Ellen DeGeneres, and I think like one of the questions was like they brought somebody from the studio audience up, and she's like, "How old are you?" Or Ellen said to this girl, "How old are you?" And she's like, "Oh, like 20, 22, 23, whatever." And she points at Bill Gates and she goes, "By the time he was your age, he was already a millionaire." And I'm like,
okay.
And so Bill Gates ends up talking about like how hard done he was by. He's like, when I went to private school, I wasn't the richest guy there. Clearly not. There was other guys there with families who owned a Porsche.
Yeah, but like
it's really hard to start a sentence off like, when I went to private school, I was the poorest person there at my private school.
yeah, and like we'll get to this, but there's like points, like a point in toward the end of this movie where they kind of point that out, that like even as humble as your beginnings might be, you still like you can absolutely lose your way and become one of the bad people. Like even if like Bill Gates was this really poor guy that like had no money as a child and like worked like absolutely kicked capitalism's ass by moving from literal rags to riches, it wouldn't make a lot of the stuff he does okay. Like it wouldn't have made it okay for him to like like keep those vaccines from becoming public sourced, or like buying out and undermining all those tech companies in the 90s, which he did to like establish dominance. It's like you can become the bad guy. You got to remember that. It's about staying ideologically consistent and not like, oh, now because I'm the good guy, I'm allowed to do the bad things.
I think with the like wealth and power go a lot hand in hand. Like, here's the thing: I talk a lot of shit about being rich and being like living a good lifestyle, but like I've never lived on the other side of the fence. Like,
yeah.
I talk a lot about Jeff Bezos, who's like been famously known for like hoarding his wealth. But in hindsight, like if I won the lottery yesterday, like tomorrow, what would I be doing with it?
Probably buying a house or something, securing your wealth for future generations.
Yeah, like what I'm saying is I wouldn't be like, oh well, I just won the lottery, let's go give like, all of it to charity. I'd be like, oh well, let's take care of myself and my own, right?
Yeah, no, and it's one thing when it's like, oh, you won like $1 million, you bought yourself a house, and then you're not like going to worry about money again for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean you can solve like hundreds of people's problems on your own. Like you like it would take like a big lottery winning before like you could be like a big force for everything else in the world. Like I think a lot of people do become a little like do a bit more generous. They help people out sometimes, but like it's not comparable for a lot of people because like winning the lottery doesn't necessarily make every person like every like I think I saw like a conversation on something the other day where it's like $200,000 is a life changing amount of money for a lot of people, and there are people that make that every day. You just
There's
got yeah
people that make way more than that every day.
yeah, and like it's not comparable to compare what like one of us would do with $200,000 with like getting it once with
Mm-hmm.
what like someone doing that would get it every month or whatever. It's not comparable to compare our situations, and what we would do with the money, really. Anyway, so yeah, big communist revolution, which they eventually they kill the governor, and we cut to the king, who's bringing in a special general who they've clarified as special for some reason. I don't know why. They could have just said, "Hey, you're the my best general. You can do this." That seems they just add on to the scene for some reason. I don't get it. So the army is going to go fight the village. Like what I said about earlier about the people doing this a lot on their own. They actually do like push back a couple waves of this army on their own. They like push rocks down a cliff to defeat a bunch of the army and stuff like that. And they get a few wins, but ultimately the issue is that they don't have a lot of food, and like the general who's fighting them just surrounds the mountains they're hiding at so they can't get food. And this is demonstrated by a scene where we're shown that they're eating a horse, which is a telltale sign about being desperate in military conflicts. Yeah, if you're sensitive about seeing a fake severed horse head, you may want to keep your eye out for the scene right after they say they're surrounding the mountains. So there's your content warning. Some men going for a food raid get caught and killed. Some soldiers find Ami while she's gathering some stuff, but Pulgasari, now the size of a man, plus some, manages to fight off these soldiers. And she brings Pulgasari to the bandit camp so that he can fight the army, which they do. And he steadily grows really big. And eventually, at this point in the movie, he's currently kaiju, a proper kaiju size, which is an interesting thing about this movie. Like we all know that these kaiju are just guys in suits, but they normally don't dare show these kaiju in context with real people. And this one's just like, hey, he's growing, so we can use the suit in with regular people. So that's kind of neat. It's funny that it hasn't been done that way as much. I think there's at least one monster in a later movie that kind of does that, but still, it's interesting. And they don't stick with one suit through all this. They bring out special suits for when he's a certain size, when he's small, and when he's man-sized, and when he's kaiju-sized. So they're not being cheap with this either.
Okay, so quick question, because you did talk about the suit in context to the beginning, and I kind of zoned out on that. When they did the original showing of I'm drawing blanks on the name now.
Baby Pulgasari?
The Pulgasari suit, did they scale things down and just show a full-grown man?
They could have been a puppet.
Like how like
for the really small stuff.
1985, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have puppet. The Muppet technology can probably be. Yeah. Muppet technology is probably around. Like we forget, like we call them Muppets, but they can often like be seen without people in them. Like you see Yoda without a person or whatever, and they can manage it. It's doable. So I think those are some puppets at the very beginning. I think they move into having a child in the suit when he's child sized. But so yeah, they managed to fight off the government and get some big wins. The government eventually manages to kidnap Ami, and they threaten to kill Ami unless Pulgasari goes into a cage, which he does, showing some nobility. Then they set the cage on fire, seemingly killing them, killing Pulgasari. It doesn't work, and he just comes out angrier, and managed to drive this section of the army into the sea. It's unclear how the army works in this. It just seems like they're fighting them all at once, and it's odd because they just bring in new battalions every week. It seems like, and that's not very well established. The villagers, the revolutionaries, find Pulgasari again after the fight. He is hot to the touch, and they implore him to help some more because he's looking pretty rough at this point. The next plan of the general is to lure Pulgasari into a hole, which they do by having a woman try to exorcise Taksue's spirit from Pulgasari, which appears to work all right, actually. And they say she's going to try to exorcise an evil spirit. If the creature, which is an interesting little bit of foreshadowing, because if the creature was fully good, wouldn't it be like implied that this wouldn't work? Or is that just a weird translation issue? Or can exorcist exorcise good spirits as well? Who knows? It's a bit of foreshadow, but this does effectively function as foreshadowing. That like Pulgasari does a bit of a not a full heel turn, but he becomes a problem later in the movie, and this is a bit foreshadowing into that. Anyway, as they exorcise the spirit, Pulgasari falls in the hole, which the army fills, leading to the revolutionaries getting their first real defeat since the beginning of the movie, I should say. The army is having a big celebration, and a woman helps sneak Ami behind enemy lines so that she can sneak through the capital city, so that she can go to the pit where Pulgasari is, where she cuts her arm so that she can bleed into the hole, into where the center of it, and try to revive Pulgasari, which works. And Pulgasari fights the army, breaks into the capital, and fights off some big fancy guns for the next fight. And this eventually results in them defeating the king and fully liberating the country. And Inde is captured and killed in the fight while Pulgasari is out. So there's a lot of cost, but Pulgasari manages to liberate the capital, squishing the emperor, the king, under his feet. Everyone has their freedom, which is, it's weird seeing like a fantasy story where the king gets beaten up and the king's absolutely the bad guy, and they're not trying to like restore another king, which is refreshing actually. It's one of the better. The victory is democracy, or like people's uprising angles I've seen in a fantasy movie. Normally it seems a bit clunky. It's even a bit of like a meme in D&D circles that They just solve everyone's problems by like forcing democracy on people, which it's not necessarily as simple as that, but it's kind of as simple as that. I cannot stress how bad absolute monarchies are. They're just the worst political systems that exist. They get as far as they do by using swords on people.
Even
That's
to
all
this
it is.
day.
Oh, yeah, no, they're awful. The only reason we keep ours around is because they don't have a lot of power and like it's a lot of paperwork to get rid of them.
Is it though?
Yeah, it is. You could just kick them out, but you gotta through Parliament. Some fucking lawyer will say a thing about like, oh, you can't get rid of the king, blah blah blah. It's work. It's work to do.
Because I mean, like the monarchy destroyed the sovereignty of so many people.
Oh yeah, no.
It'd be almost poetic to strip the monarchy of its own sovereignty.
Oh yeah, it would be. But we got to work in paper, Cody. You got to understand this is we got to do things by the book, no matter how inconvenient and pointless it is. Yeah.
That's what they want you to believe.
Yeah, I mean, there's way that backfires, but yeah, no, we could get rid of the queen. She doesn't. We don't need monarchs at all, ever, really.
Well, I don't hate the queen. I hate what the queen stands for.
Yeah, no, it's just I don't want you around. That's all this is. You can. I'm not gonna kill you. You can go be mildly interesting somewhere else. I just don't want to pay you.
But you have a whole palace right now.
Yeah, no.
Does she draw a salary?
Yeah, no, there's some of that, yeah. Yeah, no, it's one of those things.
$97.2 million.
Yep. But they're bringing so much money in tourism. I don't know. Fuck it.
Yeah.
I don't think we should have major
actually worth.
Too much.
If monarchies were recently doubled.
Yeah. If monarchies were so great, my family wouldn't have left the southern England to go live in this frozen hellhole.
Did they do it by choice though?
Mine did. Yeah.
Okay. I just know that's like some people have told me like, but my family stole a horse back in like Ireland and that's why we're here in Canada today.
Yeah, in Ireland.
I don't know.
My family's from England.
Or yeah.
We're law-abiding citizens, thank you.
But I mean, it would have been a lot on the same principle there.
No, the criminals go to Australia, don't you know?
Yeah. Yep, that was a thing too.
Yep.
Penal colonies.
So yeah, so the monarchy's dead. The people are free, but there's a problem. Pulgasari's still hungry. They feed him the cannons they had used to try to. The king had tried to use to kill Pulgasari. That doesn't sate him. The villagers end up bringing him a big offering of iron, which I would say puts them back where they started, but I don't honestly know that giant kaiju is worse than monarchs. Like, we might have to use wooden tools, I guess. I mean, it's going to be inconvenient for a while. I mean, I think long term it's going to be problemless, but we did get our freedom, so there's that. And this issue is resolved, unlike in real life, where an absolute monarch. The Kim Jong-il is the giant kaiju. Actually, that's the metaphor. Helped us get where we are, but honestly, it's become a bit of a drain of society now. Probably do without him. Probably have some more democratic society. Yeah.
Oh, we had some good memes from it from back in like 2015, and then a while after when Trump started, we got some more good memes, and now he's just kind of fallen like off the radar in the terms of like the whole nuclear clock idea that has been a thing for a long time. I don't know, maybe Joe Biden will push his buttons and we'll get some more memes out of it. Like, I talk a lot of shit about Kim Jong-un, but please don't come after me. I mean, this is hardly the worst thing Canadians have said to you yet.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, no, he's... But yeah, so that's the metaphor, is that Pulgasari is going to become a problem, is going to be at least a problem, if not as big as one of the Monarch is. And really long term, when they have to like go elsewhere to go invade other places to get their iron in order to feed this endless, all-consuming monster, which this could also be a metaphor for capitalism, because I mean, capitalism was the thing that got us some of the freedoms, but ultimately is going to lead to some more problems in the future. Ultimately, and instead of and we kind of need to get rid of it eventually in order for the working people to get their real power. I don't know. Just seems like a thing. Might be some metaphors going on here. Multiple of them. There's multiple readings of this movie. I don't know. I need to stop talking like this. Anyway, blah. So Ami tries talking to Pulgasari to try to get him to be moderate. Doesn't seem to succeed. So what she does, her plan, no idea how she came up with this. It works, but she rings a big temple bell, which is made of pure iron, or made of iron. She rings it to go attract Pulgasari, who's going to get it to have a meal. And she hides in the bell and gets eaten by Pulgasari. Pulgasari hears a prayer from her to get essentially prays that Pulgasari should fuck off, leave the world. You did your job, thank you, but I'm gonna need you to leave, buddy. This could also be a metaphor for violence, because the political violence was necessary to get rid of the monarchs, but now it's just becoming a liability to go more violent than they need to. It's about the end of violence.
This is really, really ultimately became like an anti-PSA like kaiju film about the overwhelming.
Yeah, you know what's weird? I think this is this just one of is this just one of the better kaiju films?
It has a message, but I mean that doesn't necessarily make it better.
I mean, a lot of kaiju movies are crap, let's be honest.
Okay, so I guess the way I should look at this, I've never watched Peter Jackson's like King Kong. I've never seen Godzilla. I've never seen Godzilla vs. King Kong. I didn't fully like Rampage. Transformers is kind of its own like
yeah, that's kind of kaiju
offshoot of kaiju kind of, but like I've never seen any of besides Transformers, I've never seen any other kaiju film. This is my first
Pacific Rim
take on the whole kaiju. No. My brother's a big fan of it, but I never sat down to watch it.
Yeah. I've watched a few of them. I've watched like the MonsterVerse ones. I've watched
played the game Rampage.
I saw Rampage. Yeah. I saw Rampage.
Yeah.
I thought I didn't
Have you played the game?
I think in some form. I don't think I played it for long.
I think there was one on the like the original Super Nintendo, and then I think there was another on PlayStation 4. But basically, you just run around as a kaiju and destroy.
The Super Nintendo one's probably an arcade port. It's an arcade port. I've played a bit of it.
Buildings.
Yeah, I've seen like Shin Godzilla. I've seen Godzilla versus Space Godzilla and Godzilla versus Destroya. I'm working my way through it. I got a big bunch of the Toho Godzillas on my to watch shelf. So there's that. So yeah, Pulgasari eats Ami and feels really guilty. Unlike in real life, I don't think the Kim Jongs feel terribly guilty about what they've done. So Pulgasari ends up exploding, or not exploding, but like turning to rock and then crumbling to dust. We then cut to seeing a baby Pulgasari wandering into the mountains, turning into a ball of light and flying into Ami's dead body, which emerged, which was in the rubble. It's implied that this revives her, but she never opens her eyes, so I don't know that she's actually alive, which I think is poetic. I think she maybe sheds a tear after the light goes into her, but I think it may there's reason to believe she's still dead, which I think is a good instance of what the stakes are in this. And that's Pulgasari. Yeah, I think there's a lot to this movie. I think it's actually pretty good. Obviously not worth the stuff that happened in it, but yeah, I think it's pretty good. What are your thoughts?
So the reason why we decided to do kaiju film was there was the Godzilla versus King Kong hype in the long run. So I asked Kyle for some backstory on why we're doing this. I asked Kyle, he knows a lot more about kaiju films. I asked him to pick out a kaiju film for this. And so we had a post a while back that was asking whether, if there's any films that you want to see on. I do believe it was the first or the second season of the podcast. We reached out to the community and said, hey, is there anything you want to see done? And somebody had mentioned on it that we should do the Gamera films. And so when I asked Kyle to pick a movie out, I expected him to pick out the Gamera film because of that conversation, and he went really different with it. The only backstory behind that was that I knew John Oliver covered Pulgasari, but I'm
Pulgasari.
Stupid name.
Too many syllables.
Pulgasari, the film. Yeah, John Oliver covered the film in one of his segments, so I knew the film existed. I knew what the film was about. I knew the backstory behind it, and I said, sure. I shouldn't have said sure. We should have done Gamera.
Well, Gamera lost the viewer poll in season 2, or season 1 or 2, if you'll remember. So, I felt like
what?
It lost to Titan AE.
Well, yeah, of course, it's Titan AE.
Yeah, so I decided to do this instead.
This was not comparable to Titan AE.
So yeah, so that's why I didn't do Gamera. Besides, Gamera is the second most popular kaiju. So there's like better, more show appropriate things we could do. We could do like Ultraman or something, probably. Or no, I suppose
Can Pulgasari beat Godzilla? Probably not. Can Pulgasari beat King Kong?
No, maybe.
Probably not. Can Pulgasari?
I mean, Pulgasari is named pretty resilient, which King Kong isn't. Like, King Kong got killed by a bunch of biplanes in the original, so that's good. There's good reason to believe that Pulgasari could beat King Kong.
In my opinion, I think Gamera would be able to take on both of King Kong and Godzilla. Not at once, but I think if they were two separate encounters, I think they'd win.
Sure.
He's a giant radioactive turtle.
So yeah, I don't know. I came out of this feeling pretty positive about it.
I came out of this where I was like, I don't want to really have to think about all the bad things that went into the film being made, and I didn't want to think about all the political propaganda during the whole entire movie. So I kind of went into it with a very shade of I didn't want to have to take anything or too much away from the film.
I think there's enough. I didn't want to. Yeah, I think there's enough intentional stuff in there that that kind of like undercuts what the North Korean regime does, and I think it's on purpose, because like you can say like, oh, if there was intentional anti-North Korean sentiment in there, or People's Democratic Republic of Korea sentiment there, Kim Jong-il never would have let it get made. But then again, authoritarians can be dumb sometimes. You can sneak stuff past them if you catch them if you catch the right one. So it might have been a risk he took. You can do a reading of this film through the North Korean propaganda machine and come out all fine. But I think there's enough sentiment that this could undermine North Korea in a way. So there's that. But yeah, I think it's does good.
Mm-hmm.
What do you give the movie, Cody?
I'm gonna go probably fairly lower on the scale. I think I'm gonna at least give it I don't know, maybe a 4 out of 10. I kind of like the costumes.
Yeah,
That's about it. The action sequences were all right, and some of the sound effects got repetitive.
yeah.
It was subtitled, so I really didn't like having to read everything straight down to like maybe it was the cut that you had sent me, but like even the lighting on it seemed to be really
Yeah.
off. They had rocket propelled arrows, which was kind of cool, but
I don't know.
besides that,
Yeah, that could have been what that was actually, but I think they were just like really big arrows with like white shafts or whatever.
no, because they were lighting the ends of them.
I suppose. Yeah, the sound effects in this can be bad at points. There are a lot of really cheesy older sound effects, like swords striking each other sounds like a big like lasery sound, which is kind of dumb. And yeah, it does seem like an older movie than it actually is. As for like the quality of the video I sent you, I found it on YouTube, and it's I don't think there's a good version of this that's like high quality. I don't know there's ever been like a Blu-ray conversion. I don't know what the I assume it's just on film if it is, or like recorded onto stuff, because the distribution system on this isn't going to be, by the nature of it being a North Korean film, isn't going to be terribly convenient for anyone. So I think we're going to be stuck with like a lower end cut for a while. I am giving this movie an 8 out of 10, subtracting a point for all the kidnapping. Like, I could subtract more, but I feel like that would undercut the point. Like, if we're taking a point for every crime that was committed in this movie's like minus 112. But like on its own, I think without context, or without context of the crimes committed to make the movie, I think it's a 9 out of 10. But I'm giving it an 8. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really good movie. I think it's probably one of the better kaiju movies that exists. Um, Anything else?
No, not overly. I don't
Yeah.
have a whole lot to say. I
Yeah.
stick by my 4 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I get it. I the user scores on this,
I didn't want to learn a history lesson.
like, I don't think by promoting this film you're giving North Korea any credit anymore, because it's pretty thoroughly censored there now. So I don't think it hurts because they don't like it anymore, so it's okay to like it. It's got 5.3 on IMDb, 26% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is low, perhaps, but I think it is genuinely good. I'm not like saying this is a meme. Like, I think a lot of people giving it 5-star reviews are like doing it as like, oh, this is an awesome weird movie, and I'm like, oh no, I think this is honestly like a good piece of art. The suit looks a bit weird because like it's got really big eyes, which is odd. You
Yeah,
can understand why they keep you can understand why they keep the eyes small in most of these suits. Although he is kind of like a toy construct, so I think that kind of like makes sense. But I think that's all for this week. So yeah, thanks for listening this week. Make sure to give us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you watch this. Like the video, see us on Kyle and Cody's Called CinemaCast on YouTube. Find us on Twitter at KC Cinema Pod. Find us on Facebook and Instagram as Kyle and Cody's Called CinemaCast. So here's the question: what do we want to do next week or next episode? Because we can either do Avengers or we can do one of the sub-theme episodes. It's up to you. I'm impartial.
Up to me.
Yep, you pick. Do you want to do Avengers or do you want to pick a movie for the sub-theme?
I can definitely pick a movie from the sub-team.
Okay.
Because the 1998 Avengers film is probably not that good.
Okay, we're still doing it in May. It's just a matter of whether you want to do it first.
I don't.
Okay. Okay, so
yeah, I'll get back to you on what
okay. So
what we'll do for the sub theme,
yeah.
but
okay. So May 11th we'll have the first our first episode of the sub theme premiering of our sub theme this season, which is adaptations of books that never should have been made. So see you in 2 weeks, because this will come out on the 27th. So yeah, see you in 2 weeks, guys. Have a nice week.